Now at this part of our video, we're going to look at all the different techniques. So we looked at the attacks, and what's interesting is that the end of the technique will always be the same. They won't change. Just you will have to, based on how the attacks change, that's how the beginning of the specific technique is going to change. But nevertheless, if you know a technique, it will be the same technique. There's some of the techniques have variations how to do it, but nevertheless, the end is pretty much always going to be the same as always. Just the beginning is switching. So there's not that many different techniques by themselves in Aikido, but the difference is the variations oftentimes depend on the beginning of the technique. So we actually won't have to spend so much time here looking at all the different techniques themselves. So now the first 6 ones to mention are called principles. So it's Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, Yonkyo, Gokyo, and Rokkyo. So Ikkyo, Nikkyo, these are numbers. So if you know Japanese counting, ichi, ni, san, yon, go, roku, Ikkyo, ichi, Nikkyo, ni, Sankyo, san, Yonkyo, yon, and so on. So there's a number, and Ikkyo, the rest of the part means the principle. So there's the first principle, second principle, third principle, so on and so on. So the first principle is, my partner Martynas is going to be just simply responsive. He won't attack me, but I'll show the principles. So the first one, Ikkyo, is classified by the fact that I grab him just above the elbow, grab his hand, and there's either receptive or active movements of Ikkyo. So omote or ura. Omote is front, ura is back. So the omote is I push him down here. The ending again is going to be the same as I go down. Ikkyo is quite simple in the fact that I simply bring him down and keep him here. I turn the elbow forwards. If the elbow is up, it will be easier for him to get up. But my feet are together. I'm staying on the toes. Now, if he's not flexible, I don't need strength here, and if he tries to get up, he won't be able to. Though one thing to notice is that if I'm just keeping down here, if he's flexible and he understands how the technique works, he can actually bring his hips up and turn them out. So that's the weak part of Ikkyo. One way to go around that is to bring it out diagonally. Now here, it will be still possible, but harder for him. He's very, very flexible, so most likely he would be able to do it, but here you're a bit safe already. You could use the knee on top or simply another different variation of the principles which we're going to show, which are actually safer to do. Also, the receptive part is what I showed already before in the other part of the video, is I go behind him and I give him my space. So that's the receptive Ikkyo. Now, Nikkyo is classified based on both the beginning and the ending. The omote version, it's similar to Ikkyo, but I go towards him and I bring him out. The back version is classified by bringing his hand next to the shoulder, turning myself in, and then bowing down. And then afterwards, the end, it's the same in both ways. As I bring him down, my one arm is going to hold the shoulder, the other one is going to hold his elbow so it wouldn't bend, and I go towards his head. That's the mobilization of Nikkyo, the second principle. Now, Sankyo will be classified by holding the hand here and turning towards him, bringing him out. In some styles, omote will be, the front version is going to be next to the shoulder. You have to be careful of the elbow. Having the fist turning here, and ura, both hands here. Some of the dojos will have just one variation. Also, as you cut, the omote version would be going in front and bringing him down, and the back version would be cutting down and going behind him, giving space. Now here you could actually do the Sankyo immobilization standing, just turning here, but the traditional one, you go down on the knees, you take over the Sankyo, maintain contact again with the elbow, and you go towards the head. So that's the third principle. Now the third principle, Yonkyo, the fourth variation, you cut with the hand like as if with a sword. There's also a nerve here which you could squeeze to give extra pain. It's actually not really necessary, but most dojos do that. So in Yonkyo, I cut as if I would have a sword. I bring him down, and here I either go for the nerve or just turn into the shoulder, immobilize him right here on the ground. It doesn't even have to be full. I do it with the whole body. So it's a standing pin. If you do Omata version, you will go forward. If you do Ura, you will go behind, give him space, right here. Gokyo is a bit more subtle because it's very similar to Ikkyo, and most of the times when you do Ikkyo, actually it's going to be a Gokyo. So if you hold the hand down like this, it's Ikkyo. If you hold the hand up like this, it's then becomes Gokyo. So that's actually important when you work with a knife. With the knife, if you grab here from above, Ikkyo, it's easy for him to cut me. Here he can cut me. If you grab from below, as it's a Gokyo, now it's harder for him to cut. So that's the importance of the Gokyo. Now, when I go down here, I could take the knife right here, but Gokyo is normally the way Gokyo is done. You bring the hand down, you pull it up by the sleeve, and then right here, he mobilizes himself. The fingers become easy, relaxed. I can take out the knife. This is normally considered Gokyo, and the same is without the knife. Now, Rokkyo, the 6-pin, is a bit more dangerous, and so some of the dojos are not really introducing it much, and that's actually my case, that in our dojo, it was more dismissed as a more dangerous technique, so we wouldn't practice it much, so my Rokkyo is not perfect at all, but the general principle is that I go here for the elbow. I'm bringing down a partner. Here, my elbow goes towards his elbow. It doesn't bend it this way, so there's pain. I could actually potentially even break his arm if I would be willing to. And I go down straight away. He has to adjust to me. And here I can actually just put a bit of weight towards the hand, and there's pain in the elbow, and that's the immobilization. So these are the 6 main principles. They work pretty much attack, so there's a lot of different variations. The following technique is koregashi. Kote means wrist, gaeshi means turn, so it's classified by the turning of the wrist. Some of the dojos go towards the partner through this empty gap. Some of the dojos pull the partner in. So there's different variations, but they're all going to be ending by turning of the wrist. There's a specific version of having this way of throwing, koregashi, but it's a more rare technique. And by the end of it, after the throw, when I turn the partner around, one immobilization, you can either do a Nikkyo or just grabbing below the wrist, cutting here and immobilizing. You can also do a standing pin, right, which is quite comfortable and nice. Now, shionage, in Japanese there's 2 words for 4, shi and yon. So now, shionage, ho is direction, nage, throw. Nage, the throw, you will see in more than one instance. So the shionage, the way to explain the 4 directions, there's a few different interpretations. One of them is that you go through all 4 directions. You go west, east, north, south. Also, some dojos will say 4 directions because from here, technically you could throw in any different direction. So there's your 4 directions. So you can choose the way you interpret this, but nevertheless the technique will be the same. You cut through the person, you bring out this other shoulder, you go under. It's very important that you don't hold the hand behind you, but you keep it in front. You turn around, bring it towards the shoulder, and there's the throw. There's also a possibility to do an ura version. So omate is going through the front, ura would be going behind, but nevertheless, again, shionage will be shionage. Maybe just one more thought. There's also different ways of bringing out. You can bring out the person here just as a connective exercise, or you can also create pain here. You can also maintain a painful pin here. So there's different ways. My own perspective is less pain the better, because Aikido shouldn't create resistance. Pain creates resistance, but also notice how your dojo does it. Now, irimi nage again, you hear the word throw. Irimi itself, as we spoke before, is the entering. So for example, here I enter, then I give him space, I bring him out, and nage, I throw. Again, there's different ways to throw, but we won't look at that in depthly right now. But again, all those irimi nages will consist of an entering, the yokomuchi. Even if there's a receptive entry, still I enter here. And also, you can do it a static version. So a static version would be here. I don't bring him out, I go directly for the throw. A receptive one, I take him in and I... So interestingly enough, kaiten nage is also going to be a connection of nage, throw, and kaiten, the movement. So do remember from our previous parts, kaiten is when you turn at the spot and step back. So that's what we're going to do here. So as I enter here, I step forward, turn around, step back, kaiten nage. So kaiten nage will be a moment where the partner is down, you're holding him, and you throw from here. Also, what's interesting with kaiten nage, there's two main different versions, uchi-mawari and soto-mawari. Soto as soto-deshi, outside student, outside variation. Uchi-deshi, inside student, inside variation. So, for example, the one I showed just now, this is uchi-mawari. This is where I enter inside. And also there's the variation where I go from outside. I don't enter, I go through here. And when you do various kaiten nages, it will be either soto-mawari, uchi-mawari, or you will choose which one. But for example, at ski, where he punches, here it's because I am from the outside. Now, koshi nage is again one more instance of the hips. Is one more instance of nage, the throw, connected with another word, and this time it's koshi. Koshi is the hips, so it's a hip throw, which means you throw over the hips. So normally it consists of going inside, going under, and now it's either a wide stance where I shift my weight and I bring him on top of my hips, and then I can throw him, and I throw over the hips. So there's a wide stance throw, and also there's an instance of where I have my feet together. There's a smaller stance where I go down and up. Nevertheless, a koshi nage will consist of throwing over the hips. Juji nage, again, nage throw. Juji means a cross in Japanese, so there is actually a certain cross in the technique. So here, I bring his arms together, there's a cross. I make a cross shape, and I throw, and I maintain that cross in this position. So Juji nage will always have a cross. What's interesting is that many Juji nages can be done from a kotegaeshi. So for example, if he does it ski, I bring him out. If I can do a kotegaeshi, I can also do a Juji nage. It's not always kotegaeshi and Juji nage together. There's also variations where it's just a Juji nage, but it's an interesting point to notice. Now, last but not least, kokyu nage. Kokyu, again, it's a hard word to translate. Sometimes it's translated as a concentrated breathing, sometimes as concentrated energy, form of those two. But nevertheless, kokyu nage, it's a wide subject. Some of the kokyu nages can even actually be classified as certain techniques. But a lot of times, if you do a technique and you're not sure what technique it is, if it's not shion nage, not irimi nage, a lot of it will be simply a kokyu nage. Some of the kokyu nages can be actually a connection between different techniques. So for example, I do Ikkyo. So Ikkyo, I can make it into an Ikkyo nage, which could be considered. So it can actually be a connection between two techniques. So for example, Ikkyo, instead of going down, I will throw my partner. So it's Ikkyo nage, which could be considered a kokyu nage. The same applies to kaiten nage. I enter, and instead of going down here, I'm actually going to throw, and that's considered a variation of kaiten nage, or again a kokyu nage. But many kokyu nages will either be receptive ones where I stand in the safe spot and I throw him right here. It can also be more active one where I simply go down. This can also be called udekiminage, but again, it depends on the dojo. It can also be a variation where I go in and I receive him here. So there's many different variations. Or one more, yokomenuchi, I pass him through and throw him. Kokinage, a very wide subject. Ushiro retadori, he's trying to catch my one end, and I throw him through the other one. So there's many, many different kokinages, and even the endings of them are going to be different, but it will always end with the throw. They won't have a pin, unless you really want to add it. The throw will be necessary. So as you see, there's not as many techniques as you could think, but again, as you make variations, as you connect it with different attacks, it becomes a very wide world, a very wide subject, thousands of techniques. But as you know the beginnings, the attacks, as you know the ends, the movements themselves, the techniques, the world of Aikido becomes much more accessible.